And I just want to introduce Michelle Gross, who is a retired nurse, a paralegal, an activist. She's been doing all of that for a very long time and just made incredible changes in our community. So
You.
really excited for her to be here, really excited to learn from her, and really excited for the projects we have moving forward together. So
Absolutely.
with that, let me introduce Michelle Gross.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Woo!
And to you guys, to you, because you're doing great stuff. So, my name is Michelle Gross, and as you know, David introduced, I after I stopped working for U of M, my last position in healthcare was the manager of staff training development for University of Minnesota physicians. And after I left them, I started working as a medical paralegal, and it kind of was almost by accident because a lawyer that we had worked with for my volunteer work, which is with Communities United Against Police Brutality, that a lawyer that we knew and had done a couple lawsuits for us, asked me if I would read some medical records for him. So I started reading his medical records and doing things. And I also, had written some lawsuits and things for Communities United Against Police Brutality. So I kind of knew, I'm one of these people that I can look at what somebody else has done and like kind of replicate it. And so I kind of knew how to do this. And so that started in 2017. And I've been working for him ever since doing, we really specialize. His whole practice pretty much was jail, prison, and police brutality. But as I started doing much more work for him, we really kind of moved into the area of medical for the jail, prison stuff, other civil rights violations as well. But we really specialize in medical. And then along the way, we started becoming known for doing cases, jail death cases. And so we probably are the firm that does the most jail death cases in the state. In the average year, there are 8 to 10 jail death cases a year. Last year, there was 23. So it's really appalling. And most of these cases involve poor quality medical care. One of the famous cases, and I'll dig into this material in just a second, but I just want to give you a little background. One of the more famous cases that we worked on was the case of a young man named Hardell Sherrill. And Hardell, I'm sitting literally at my computer on a Sunday morning, just kind of putzing around on the computer. And I get this phone call from a guy named Traherne Cruz. And Traherne is basically the head of Black Lives Matter Minnesota. I've known him for years and years. We've been friends for years. And I get this phone call from him. He says, Michelle, my sister's sitting here with me because she just found out her son died in the Beltrami County Jail. And she started to tell me what happened to him and describe what had gone on. And I said, oh my God, he died from Guillain-Barré syndrome. Like I just knew it, right? If you've ever worked in an emergency room, you recognize Guillain-Barré syndrome pretty quickly. And I just knew what it was. And we ended up litigating that case against Beltrami County, but also against this medical organization called Mend Medical. And Mend Medical is one of a, gazillion of these private for-profit medical companies that basically contract with, with jails around the state. And I know we're going to talk about prisons also, and I know a lot of people here are wanting to talk about the DOC, and I'll get there. But I also deal with and work with situations in jails. And basically, because of our lawsuit, we put Mend out of business as they needed to be put out of business during their like 5 years or so that they were, contracting with probably 60% of the jails in the state. 52 people had died in the jails because of them and poor quality medical care. So
Wow.
that's appalling, right? This is, disgusting. So so I write a lot of jail death. I still write a lot of jail death lawsuits to this day. I'm actually working on one right now. The kinds of stuff that goes on in jails and prisons it's really frankly unforgivable. It's quite horrible. So that's kind of how I started getting pretty involved and interested in this. And during that time period, most recently, I wrote a bill that became a state statute called the Larry R. Hill Medical Reform Act. And what it does is it requires jails to give people the same medication that they were on when they were in the jail. Now, the reason I'm telling you about this, especially if you have interest in DOC stuff, is that a lot of guys in the DOC call me up and go, there's this new law called the Larry R. Hill Medical Reform Act. And I go, yeah, I know, I wrote it. And then they go, well, they're taking me off my medicines in the prison. Well, unfortunately, the Larry R. Hill Medical Reform Act only applies to jails, not prisons. And there's some reasons for that. And I'll explain, mostly it's because it has to do with the fact that jails are short-term and prisons are long-term. So that's really the deal. But let's go back to the beginning. People in carceral facilities, jails and prisons, have a right to health care. They have a constitutional right to health care under the 8th and 14th Amendments. The 8th Amendment bans cruel and unusual punishment, so that applies to people convicted of crimes. The 14th Amendment applies to pretrial detainees in jail because it prohibits depriving people of the rights of equal protection without due process. And so the courts have interpreted those two, constitutional, amendments. They've interpreted them as saying that they have to be given health care. Now, that's great. Got to get health care. What's the standard for health care? Now, that's where things get interesting. Okay. Constitutionally, the standard for healthcare in prisons is supposed to be, and jails, is supposed to be equal to that of care in the community. Equal to that of care in the community. That is the legal standard for healthcare in jails and prisons. So jails and prisons are required to provide or make provisions for people to have access to healthcare, regular healthcare, mental health care, dental care, hearing and eye care. All of those are included. Okay. And of course, this includes access to caregivers with the appropriate licensure to provide these services, including a process for sending people for diagnostic procedures and specialty services outside the facilities, because most facilities realistically are only going to be able to provide, primary care. They're not going to be able to provide oncology care or specialty care. There are a tiny few exceptions. For example, the prison does have a dialysis unit because they have enough people that need dialysis that it made sense for them to have it in-house. The prisons also typically have contracts with dentists, though usually not good dentists. Bluntly, that's a whole story we can talk about. But they do have, typically do some of that stuff in-house. They also have certain other things, like, for example, if somebody needs a sleep study, they have the ability to do that in-house. They have x-rays in-house, certain other, laboratory testing in-house. They have stuff like that is available within house. But anything that they can't do in-house, if a person needs it, they're supposed to be sending those people out. We'll talk all about what that looks like in a little bit. Okay. So that's the standard of care within jails and prisons. Also, something important to know about, I'm going to hold this up for y'all to see it. This is the standards of healthcare as defined by the National Commission on Correctional Healthcare. All jails and prisons have to provide healthcare as outlined in their standards. Yeah, I'm showing you this book because this book costs about $250. So I wasn't going to give it to you. I can't afford to give that many books away, right? But this is my Bible. So when I'm looking to see if somebody's care met the standard, like I'm going through somebody's medical records and I'm like, wait a minute, did they do what? I can look in here and that helps me know what the standard of care, for that particular procedure or whatever it is, So this is an important, and this is the latest version, 2026, right? So this is an important kind of like Bible, if you will, of what are the standards within jails and prisons. And jails and prisons are supposed to be certified by these people, and they're supposed to be following the standards. And unfortunately, we find that they don't, but nonetheless, there are standards in place. Also, when we do cases, a lot of the cases that we work on, we always get experts. Oh, for heaven's sakes, I'm so sorry, you guys. Excuse my phone. I actually have to stop now and take some medication because I'm on a medication that has to be taken at a certain time, and 6 o'clock is that time, so.
Well,
you all
care is important.
Yeah.
That's why we're here.
That's right. I'm gonna take care of my care, I'm gonna do that. So if you all will be, give me a little forbearance, I'm gonna
Take
just.
your time. Good time.
Okay.
Hello.
Thank you. Okay, So we're ready to go back? Okay. So, like I said, we do there are standards, they have to follow them. And so then when we're doing, like, say, a lawsuit because somebody didn't get the proper care or whatever, we also consult with experts. And the experts that I have on my team include, people like Dr. Homer Venters, who was the head of medical for all of the the Federal Bureau of Prisons. I have the guy that is Dr. Don Lewis, who was the head of psychiatry for the entire Bureau of Prisons and acts as a monitor. So is Dr. Venters as a monitor for jails that are under and prisons that are under consent decrees, things like that. So we have high-end people that can look at this stuff and say, you know, they truly did not meet the standard. So I'm very lucky. I have very good consultants I work with all the time. I have excellent certified correctional nurses I consult with and stuff like that. So it's good to have a team, right? That can tell me, because I'll be saying, this doesn't look right to me. And then I'll call up my nurse buddy that's a certified correctional nurse for like 30 years now. And she'll say, you are correct. This is wrong. So it's very helpful. So that's one of the things, is to understand their standards. Also, it's good to understand caregiver licenses. And then one of the documents I put in there is a scope of practice document. I teach a class like this for lawyers that litigate jail and prison cases. And scope of practice is one of the most important things. And it's really important to understand the difference between licensed staff and unlicensed staff. Unlicensed staff cannot independently provide care or even make care-making decisions. They cannot do assessments on their own or anything like that. The reason I'm telling you this is there are these group of people, they either call them health techs or medication techs. And these are people that come in and they have maybe 2 weeks or 3 weeks of training on how to take vital signs and things like that. And some of the jails, not the prisons now, but the jails have used these people as the gatekeepers for who can actually be able to see, a doctor or whatever. So one of the cases that I worked on was the Bruce Lundmark case out of Beltrami County. This poor man had a hot abdomen, what we would call a hot abdomen in nursing, really horrible pain, all of this stuff like that. And he kept going and trying to get medical care, but the health tech kept saying, well, your vital signs aren't too far off. You're not too bad. And they wouldn't let him get any medical care. They wouldn't let him see anybody. And he bled out. He bled out from a perforated ulcer and died right there in the jail. And those are an excruciating death. There's no reason for that. So, this is a person who's making medical decisions who's utterly unqualified to make them. And the fact that the jail allowed that person to make those decisions is really outrageous. So I would, urge you to kind of click on that scope of practice document at some point and just kind of look it over. Because one of the other things that comes up, in the prison, I've got a person who has some severe eye problems. And I'm working with that family. And the family called me and said, well, the OA, which means ophthalmic assistant, decided that the glasses he has are good enough. That he doesn't need those kind of glasses. This is a guy that's got like chronic migraines, he's got brain injuries and stuff, and he needed like dark shaded glasses. Oh no, they decided that they don't like those dark shaded glasses because they can't see his eyes. So they're going to give him pink glasses instead, which don't screen out the light, right? So, and that was being decided by what's called an OA, or an ophthalmic assistant. Well, let me tell you about an ophthalmic assistant. An ophthalmic assistant is unlicensed. Basically, or essentially, they're like a medical assistant with some additional training. And so those are not people who should be making decisions about people's eye stuff.
I have a question, if that's okay.
Go, come on in with questions.
Awesome. And do you mind just copy and pasting the core documents into the chat again? Because Angela wanted to see the document.
Yeah.
So my question is, often in prison, people will put in a medical kite.
Yes.
And it will go to a nurse. Are they a licensed staff or are they unlicensed staff?
No, nurses are licensed staff, and the ones that they use at the DOC are RNs. So they are able to act under their own licenses. And then they do have a fair number of advanced practice nurses as well. So PAs, well, not PAs, they're not advanced practice nurses, but they do have PAs, which physician assistants, and then they have advanced practice RNs, which is nurse practitioners and clinical nurse specialists. And they are highly qualified to do what they do, right? And so that's, so on the other hand, we want to know the ones who can do the work, right? So I think that that's a pretty important piece for people to know. So when people talk to me about this stuff, I want to know who's the one making the decision.
I think the question too is, so in the document that you shared with us.
Those are actually 2 documents.
Okay, so I think we're missing where that document is for the scope of practice for unlicensed and licensed medical personnel.
It's not, see how the core documents, there's 2 documents.
There's 2 documents. So yeah, it's this, I think, I don't know if it's the second one or the first one.
It's the first one is the scope, and yeah, the
So
second
we
one.
need to copy and paste both.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, they're definitely there. And also, I'm happy to send it to anybody or whatever. I never mind this because I think it's really important. Like I said, I do teach a class for lawyers also, and I want them to understand, because when I read these medical records and I see these health techs and these kinds of people making decisions, then, I'm going, wait a minute now, and literally that is what happened in that one case in Beltrami County. So, and I see that, and I see sometimes that happens even within the prison system, though they have really pared down working with anybody who is not an RN or above. So they've really kind of clipped all of that down at the prison to a certain degree, in the medical lane, in the eye care lane, and in the dental lane. And in those other lanes, they are not so good. Okay. So it's really important to know this stuff and figure out who these people are that are providing this care and that sort of stuff. So that's a big deal. And like I said, a number of these jails use these unlicensed people, and this causes big problems. One of the biggest things I see in jails, and I realize, like I said, most of you all are thinking about prison stuff, but I want to talk about both, if that's okay. Because one of the things that I see in jails a lot, and it makes me sad, but I think probably the last 7 or 8 lawsuits I've written have involved really poor quality care for people in withdrawal, in substance use disorder withdrawal. So particularly opioid withdrawal. And, there are very specific protocols, and NCHCC has really strong protocols of what you need to do for somebody that's in withdrawal, because withdrawal is a dangerous medical condition. It is not to be taken lightly, and a lot of these nurses do take it lightly. It's super, super frustrating to me, because I see where, people are desperately ill, and these nurses are like, well, they're dope sick, whatever, they just kind of treat it casually. And like I said, though, this is probably the last 7 or so lawsuits I've written are for people that died because they didn't get proper withdrawal care. And withdrawal care is vitally important, because withdrawal it can be a deadly medical condition. So these things are really, to me, very important. And so we've got to make sure. And a lot of times, like I said, it's because these people are not well trained to take care of people, and the ancillary staff are not telling them that these folks are in bad trouble. The other thing that I do want to mention that I see sometimes, you should know that all what we call COs, or corrections officers, are trained to recognize an emergency and to perform CPR and other, short-term emergency measures, including administering Narcan. So they have those trainings. And then in the jails, a lot of the smaller jails, like these very rural county jails, they're so small, they might only have 10 beds, right? So they don't have full-time nursing care. So they have what are called medically trained corrections officers, or health trained corrections officers, who again have more training in terms of that. Not only do they recognize emergencies, but they also can address some of these emergencies, and they also administer medications. So they'll come in and they'll give the person their insulin or whatever, they will administer the medications for people. So there's that other whole class of health trained corrections officers, or COs. Okay. So just kind of want to let you know about that. So keep your eye out for unlicensed people who are providing care. That's a big issue. Big issue. And that's something that's definitely grievable. Should not allow that. Okay. So in addition to that, I want to mention, and I know you're going to do something on prisoners with disabilities. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that, but just know this. A disability is any condition that substantially or materially limits one or more major life activity. And that can be physical, that can be mental, lots of different kinds of things that constitute a disability, okay? And then, beyond that, disabled folks have to be given the accommodations that they need to have the same rights as everyone else. So one of your people that was in, I not remember her name, Christina, right? Yeah, she
Yeah.
talked about not getting the things that she should have gotten to enable her to fully participate. When I tell you that they have these rights, this is no small matter, and we have to fight for them all the time. I know you're going to do a thing on disabilities, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it. We talk about it a lot because a lot of people do not get the accommodations they need, or the system's set up so that as soon as they get their accommodation, it gets taken away again, and all kinds of other stupid stuff. So those are a big thing we see quite a bit that people complain about.
Can I just
So,
add real quickly? I got
please.
accommodations shortly before I left.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear. What was that?
She said she got accommodations shortly before she left.
Well, of course she did. Why,
Yeah.
of course she did.
That's
Why,
Yeah.
of course she did. Yeah. Yeah. And that kind of thing. So, that's an important thing. I want to go back one more time to the standard of care because I forgot to mention this case that I wanted to mention. So one of the cases that I worked on a long time ago was a man who was in the prison system, and he was having a pretty much constant sore throat. And so he went in and during his when people go into the prison system, when males go into the prison system, they're sent to St. Cloud typically. It's kind of like orientation prison, if you will. And they do other things like they do a health workup on them and things of that nature. He goes into St. Cloud. He's telling them he's had a sore throat for a while and it's really been bothering him. And so the nurse practitioner looks at his throat and sees that he's got a black lesion in his throat. He's an African-American man who was a heavy smoker. Those are all factors that you say cancer, right? Ding, 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 ding. That is the cancer deal, right? And he's got this black lesion in the back of his throat, and black lesions are almost always cancer. Sorry, that's the reality. Okay. And so the PA, instead of sending this guy out to an ENT who could do a proper examination, whatever, he tried to put his cell phone into the guy's mouth and take a picture. Swear to God, you guys, I cannot, swear to
I
God,
believe it.
and then he just farted around and had the guy come back 2 or 3 more times over several months. By the time he was finally sent out to an ENT and then to an oncologist, he had advanced cancer that had pretty much taken over his entire, upper tier, lymph nodes. He had to have multiple neck reconstructions as a result. We got him out of the prison finally, and he was able to get better care outside the prison, and he has survived, but hasn't been good, so, but there was no reason for this. They could have caught it while it was an in situ cancer, like that one location only, right? Instead, they let it go, and that kind of thing. So this is the kind of dumb stuff you see. And part of it is this. There's a big conflict in jails and prisons about medical care. And you know what that conflict is? It's almost always tied to, the provision of care is tied to a for-profit company. So in the prison system, it's Centurion. In the jails, it's a bunch of different companies, the leader being Advanced Correctional Healthcare. And man, are they terrible. That's who I won most recent 2 lawsuits against is ACH. They are just plain horrible. And so they're highly incentivized. Remember, they're for profit, right? They're highly incentivized to not provide care to people because the more care they provide, especially specialty care, if they send people out, then guess what happens? They got to pay for that, right? So what happens with, say, for example, the prison, they have a whole process, and their process for sending people for outside care is that caregiver that saw that person has to write up a bunch of forms, which right away I can tell you that, caregivers hate that stuff, right? So they got to write up a bunch of forms. Then those forms have to go into the central office to be reviewed. They have to go into Centurion central office to be reviewed. And then the doctor on high decides that those people can have that care. So that's basically the process. And that's why it takes for freaking ever to get people the care that they need. I'm working with a guy right now, for example, who was diagnosed with colon cancer. Sad situation that happens. People get older, they get colon cancer. He got diagnosed with colon cancer. He started chemotherapy. He was supposed to go back a month after, because they did some surgical removal, and he was supposed to go back a month after for a follow-up. And we are now at 5 months trying to get his damn follow-up. But this is the kind of stuff you see in the DOC, because again, when you have a for-profit company doing the healthcare, that's the big issue. Is, the more they send people out, the more it's going to cost them, right? So that's, I think, a big conflict. All right. So one of the things that I try to do in the work that I do is I try to help people get the health care that they need. I try to help people get justice when they don't get that care. But the other thing I try to do is I try to change the laws, the statutes, the rules, all of those things that we can make it so people get the health care they need. So one of the rules that we got, or one of the statutes that we got passed in 2025 was a thing called the Larry R. Hill Medical Reform Act. And I'm going to tell you about it because it applied. Yeah, that was a big one, right? It requires jails to give people the medication they came in on. And because I had people call me that weren't getting their insulin. I had people calling me I had one guy that was on anticoagulants or like blood thinners, right? Because he had a genetic disorder that caused him to have excessive clotting. And he didn't get his medication for over a month. And he developed a bunch of clots in his hands and almost lost his hands. So this is crazy stuff, right? So, and I was getting so many of these. And including the gentleman this was named after, which is Larry Hill, who was in the Hennepin County Jail for like 5 months, wasn't getting his mental health medications. And because he was, he had serious and persistent mental illness, namely schizophrenia, he started becoming paranoid and he believed that the COs were poisoning his food. So he stopped eating and starved to death in the jail. And that's why we made that law, right? Because we wanted people to have to, be able to get access to their medications. And, the jails are so damn cheap, and especially these medical providers are like, they're not making sure people get their medications. So that's one of the things. But here's the thing. I'm getting a lot of calls these days from guys in the prisons that are saying, there's this new law called the Larry R. Hill Act. And I'm like, yeah, I know, I wrote it. And then they go, well, they have to give me my meds. Okay, unfortunately, it doesn't apply to them. It applies only to jails, not to prisons. And again, because prisons are long-term care, so people's medical needs change over time. So that's why we can't make them do that. So I want to think about some other kinds of changes legislatively that we need to do to address the prison situation. And we can talk about that more. Other thing I want to tell you about. And by the way, ask your questions, you guys. Ask your questions. I don't need to just sit here and lecture you. It's boring, right? So ask your questions.
Q&A
Huh?
at the end too.
What?
Like we'll do a Q&A at the end
But
too.
Mary's ready, so go
Yeah,
ahead.
do it.
Yeah, you can ask your questions.
I'm wondering what oversight there is. Like we have Joint Commission that comes to our outside facilities to
Yeah.
check on us. And so you showed that book from the accrediting agency.
Yeah.
Do they ever do audits? And
No. Okay, so the way that it works is that the DOC, the Department of Corrections, oversees the prisons, and they have to answer to rules. So, and this is pretty common for all government entities, right? Is that there might be a statute that says, you have to do this, this, and this, and this, but it doesn't tell them how they have to do it. So then within that agency, they develop what's called rules. They have a whole rulemaking process. And by the way, the reason I think it's good to talk about that is because that's a very good place that you can have input. I've been involved in lots of rulemaking with the Post Board, which is the Peace Officer Standard and Training Board. It's the licensing agency for cops. We wrote a lot of really important rules, including one that said that cops can't be members of white supremacist organizations. That was a pretty good rule, don't you think? So, yeah, so I helped write that rule. I was pretty proud about that. So, we're always trying to address rules and things like that. And the DOC, so the DOC has been going through a rulemaking process. And then also under the state statutes, the DOC oversees jails for the whole state, all jail facilities. And within their rules are the rules about what has to happen with the jails. Okay. And so we just went through a rulemaking process, Rule 2911, which is the rule that oversees jails. And so I made it my business to be part of that rulemaking process because we had just gotten the Larry R. Hill Medical Reform Act passed, and I wanted to make sure it reflected in the rules. And in some ways it did not. So we took care of that problem. And so this is important stuff. There was another thing in the rules that said, for example, the jails, if they have Narcan in their kits and this and that, and they have healthcare trained COs, they can use the Narcan. I was like, what do you mean if they have it? Narcan costs $25 freaking. We have an opioid epidemic in this state and in this country. Why wouldn't every jail have to have it? And look, I've taught CPR, first aid, all that stuff for like 25, 30 years. We teach you how to use Narcan in 5 minutes flat. Why wouldn't they make those jails have people that know that?
So how do you find the rules in terms of how they relate to prisons, and what happens if they're violating those rules?
Oh, good questions. Okay. So where you find those rules is on the Department of Corrections website. You just look up rules. And they have like different sections and different, so you can find the ones related to healthcare, for example, are the ones related to programs or whatever, different things. They're right on the DOC website.
Is that
Like all rules, they're
policy?
technical, huh?
Is that the policy page?
No, it should be on the rule. You could literally go on their website and just do the search engine and just, the little search thing and just look up rules.
Okay.
And they have to publish the rules on their site. And they have a rulemaking page even because of they're going through and revising their rules. Part of the reason they're revising their rules is because back in 2021, I worked with the family of Hardell Sherrill, and we wrote the Hardell Sherrill Act to improve, the rules in the jails. I'm sorry, in the prisons, and the jails both. And the Hardell Sherrill Act is extremely big. It is a comprehensive act. It's probably, 60 or 70 pages. It's very comprehensive about what has to happen in the DOC and and it addresses both the DOC and the jails, which I'm very proud about. Zorislav the guy that I work for, had a big role in writing that. I helped write it, and Delshia, who is the mother of Hardell, wrote it as well. And they had a big naming ceremony, when it was signed by the governor. It was a very big deal. This was one of the biggest state statutes that have been passed in a long time. So that was a pretty big deal.
Which state statute was that?
It's called the Hardell Sherrill Act. And then the Larry R. Hill Act actually modifies part of the Hardell Sherrill Act. So that's how it's structured. So I know all this stuff sounds like it's really complicated, like, oh God, legislative things. But
So if you find a rule that they're not following.
Okay, if you find a rule, yeah, we will. Can I come back to that in a minute?
Yeah,
Okay.
sorry.
I want to see what Sarah wants to talk about real quick first. Sarah.
Hi, thank you. So if an individual is prescribed something while they are incarcerated, so maybe a medication they weren't on before they went to prison, is there any regulations in place that kind of ensure that they'll be able to like get that medication once they're released? Because I know that can be an issue that comes up, is if they are prescribed something while they're incarcerated, then they have issues getting that medication when they're released.
Part of pre-release planning is to make sure that people have healthcare coverage. So they almost always put people in for medical assistance as part of pre-release planning. And so and people should take advantage of that and really get on that medical assistance as fast as they can, because that process can take 60 or 90 days. So they should start well before they are leaving the system to get that. Because I've got, like, for example, a guy right now that just called me about the issues he was having with the DOC. And I said, well, have you gotten any follow-up since you got out 2 months ago? No, because I don't have my insurance yet. So I was literally telling him, you're gonna go down to the service center tomorrow morning and get that insurance straightened out, and that kind of stuff.
Can I ask a question about that
Yeah.
medical assistance? Is that just the like state provided medical assistance? Because that process alone can take
Can take-
like
yeah.
3 to 6 months. I used to work for the Department
Yeah.
of Ramsey County that did that. So that's like something if you're on the outside, you have to get on immediately, but like that would make it even more crucial than on the inside to do this.
Yes.
Because it takes, like you said, 90 days at least.
Some people that are in the system actually can get MA now if they have a chronic illness.
Oh.
Certain chronic illnesses are allowed to be covered by MA while people are in the prison. So they should look into that also. And I don't know, I don't have the list like in my head about what those are, but I think it's like, chronic kidney disease and end-stage renal disease and certain lung diseases and stuff like that. I don't remember the exact list, but people should ask their caseworkers for that information.
Do you mind if I pipe in for just 1 second regarding the insurance and
Sure.
the difficulty I had? I received state medical care 2 months after I was released, did my care, but for some reason the DOC was still showing I was incarcerated. And I'm still,
Good Lord.
I'm still today. I mean, I've been fighting this for 5 months now. They're stating you did not have insurance. So, it's very frustrating. I'm still frustrated.
Yeah, no, I believe you. One of the things to know too is when you apply for MA, when you apply, you can actually, but you have to ask for it. They'll never tell you this, but you can ask for it to be made retroactive for 3 months. But
Yeah,
people don't know
I
that.
did.
Yeah, it's a very important right that people have, but they don't typically know. So
There was another hand Zoom user. Do you want to ask a question?
glad you can see that.
Yes, hi Michelle, it's Talame. I was just wondering if you could speak more about the lack of like sort of, I guess like literacy, I suppose, when it comes to those documents of understanding like the medical and having to apply for such documents and the lack of like access to that within the jails. And how like these jails like do screw these people
Yeah.
over.
It's a true statement. A lot of people, because people don't know their rights. I teach know your rights trainings for dealing with cops, and man, you cannot believe how many people do not know their rights, right? And give their rights away freely because they don't know any better, right? And it's the same thing, in these facilities, people don't know their rights. They don't know what they can and cannot do. They don't know what these jails have an obligation to do for them. So that's where the advocacy, really comes in. Like the stuff you guys are doing, the stuff I do, that advocacy really matters. And one of the things that I try to do is I try to work hard with the families of people because I'm just me, right? So if I'm calling up, I can do the nursing talk thing on them and go, hey, listen now, blah, 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 right? But the families can have a huge impact. And I'm always a really big fan of the families getting involved and, holding these people's feet to the fire because, I can only make so many phone calls a day, right? And they're after a while like, oh, you again, they recognize your phone number, right? They're like, no, right? But all these people calling and saying, this needs to happen. Why isn't he getting his meds? That kind of stuff. Those are the things that I think are really important to address. And by the way, when you know about a rule that they're violating, you should, it depends on the nature of the rule, right? If it's a rule that's, there's not an urgency to the timeliness of it or whatever, then you could address it through like a letter to the commissioner or different things like that. But if this is if there's a rule that's a health related rule that they're violating and that person needs urgent medical care, well, let me tell you, we're going to get on the phone. We're not going to, so I haven't got to I haven't got to the advocacy stuff yet, but I'm going to get there soon. I swear, so,
Sorry, we have one more question.
oh, one more question? Sure, fire
Well,
away.
and like these also might just be like more advocacy type questions, but I think like when you were talking about like, how families can like hold their feet to the
Yeah.
fire and can say, like, hey, why didn't you get his medication? I think when, you know, they refuse medications or they're saying that they can't give them those medications, like, what are your responses in that direct?
I'll
you
come,
know?
if it's okay, I'd like
Oh, yeah,
to come back to some of that, okay? Because I want to just give you a little bit more information. One thing is, people don't often know this, but, people in carceral facilities have the same HIPAA rights as everyone else in terms of their privacy. Believe it or not, we've actually sued in a situation where, because of at MSOP, these guys all have lockers, okay? And, or like mailboxes or whatever. And we've had two situations where one guy's medical records and therapeutic records got put in a different guy's mailbox. And then that different person took it and was like sharing it around with all the other people there and so forth and so forth. And those are lawsuits, you know, that's a HIPAA violation, you know, so important stuff to know. Mary?
Yeah, so when the inmate has to give the medical kite to the CO, because that's the only way they can get it to medical,
Right.
how is that protecting their HIPAA rights?
It's kind of crappy. You're right. It's not an ideal situation. Better is if people can use a kiosk, which they do in the jails. A lot of them, so much if they do that in prison, but in the jails, they use kiosks and those are private. So they log in as themselves and then use the kiosk.
We have
So
two more hands.
go ahead.
Nancy, then Lori.
I was just gonna say that with the kiosk, they're only allowed 15 minutes on there. So it's
Sure.
really hard for some people to get them in. And if they do a handwritten one, it would be nice if the form had multiple sheets where they could tear off and have
Ben
proof
saying that. Ben saying that. Thank you.
that they
Ben saying
sent
that.
these kites, because you never know if they make it or not.
Yes.
Yeah, Ben saying that. I
Also,
completely
just
agree.
if some people, if you're raising your hand, we might not be able to see you. So if people on the Zoom could make sure we're not missing hands, that would be awesome. But I see Lori.
Okay. My problem is I told my friend that I need to get your power of attorney so I can talk to your doctor for you. He had to send away somewhere to get the form, took a week. He filled it out, had it notarized, mailed it to me. So now we're 3 weeks away, and he accidentally got the power of attorney, not medical. So I sent him through JPay. I sent him an attachment with a Minnesota health directive so that he could print it out and get it done right away. And they said, no, we don't allow you to print them out. He's going to have to wait for that form to come somewhere to him, sign it out, and mail it to me. I
Okay.
can't talk to his doctor now for 2 months because of it.
Hold up. So I was gonna get to that and I'm gonna talk soon about dealing with releases and things like that. Because I send that kind of stuff out all the time. Send it out constantly. I'm sending out power of attorney forms. I'm sending out, what they call, ROIs or release of information, because the DOC has a particular one they use. So, I send that stuff out all the time. They also give them out in health services. All you got to do is just go there and say, I'd like a
Just have them go
release
to
of
health
information form.
services, Lori.
Yeah,
just have them go to health services and fill in, just add your name.
Put your name on there. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
we want to get it for his outside doctor because he went to a special college.
Well, I can show you how to do that too. That's easy. That's
Okay.
super easy, actually. One of
That'd
the
be
easiest things. Yeah. So, okay. So I want to just talk for 1 second about care for substance abuse. I'm not going to read everything that you guys, can get out of these documents. But like I said, substance abuse disorder is a really serious, substance use disorder is a chronic illness. Okay. Everybody wants to frame it up like it's some kind of like character weakness or some BS like that, right? It's not. It's a chronic illness. It has to be treated as such. And also, what we know now for the most part is that especially for opioid addictions, medication assisted treatment is the way to go. It works way better than any of this suck it up and take it stuff, which is nonsense. So, but that said, when people go into the jails, they're not using it anymore and they go into withdrawal, and withdrawal is super duper serious. When one of the first things I look for when I get a record from, anybody that goes into a facility that's addicted, is I look to see if the nurses are doing what are called CWA or COWS assessments. CWA is for alcohol. COWS is for for opioid withdrawals. And they're like a series of 9 questions each. And they look at things like, agitation and blood pressure and, different kinds of things that we're looking for, nausea and vomiting, just a whole set of stuff that we look for. And people are given a score. Anybody that's got more than a moderate withdrawal, we're going to treat moderate withdrawals and we can treat them at the facility. But anybody that's got more than a moderate withdrawal needs to probably go to the emergency room. And the cases that I've worked on, the jail death cases in particular, usually involve the fact that they did not take these CY and CAL assessments. And these assessments are done at least every shift. So at least 3 times a day, but more if the score is higher. So we'll do it more frequently. And that's what is supposed to be getting done. And these guys, when I look at these records, 99% of the time I see that they got a CY when they first walked in or CALs when they first walked in and nothing ever after. And their withdrawals weren't treated properly. So those are something else that you just to know about, right? Okay, now.
Who's doing those assessments?
The nurses. It has to be done by a registered nurse or above. Because you have to remember that, like, in terms of scope of practice, the lowest level of person that can do a proper assessment and document it is a registered nurse. That is it. We can't be having medical assistants or LPNs or any of this crap. Doing that. So, and actually, interestingly, the DOC used to use a lot of LPNs and they've actually pretty much fired all of them, which I think is actually a good thing. I don't want to pick on LPNs. They're good, like, to work in medical offices and nursing homes and places like that, but they don't have the ability to do proper assessments and, you know what I mean? Because they're not trained or licensed for that. And so, we need an RN and above in those facilities. And so I think that's a good thing. So, okay, now let's understand the carceral medical system for a second. Let's step back and think about that. We know that, like, in the jails again, and in the prisons, they are required to give healthcare, right? We know that. In the jails, the amount of healthcare they give and how much availability they have, it depends on the size of the jail. When you look at a place like Hennepin County Medical Center, Hennepin County Jail, they have, I think, 450 beds or something like that. I mean, it's the biggest one in the state. Even Anoka County, I think, is 250 or 300 beds, right? And Ramsey's pretty big too and stuff like that. These places all have 24/7 stuff, okay? But then if somebody has an emergency, they're supposed to send them out. Lots of the county jails in all these small counties don't have that 24/7 stuff. So again, they have those health trained COs during the rest of the time and things of that nature. The DOC facility does have 24/7 coverage, at least they're supposed to. Okay, and sometimes it doesn't happen that way, but they are supposed to have it through their contract with Centurion. Okay, and they do have also some of their own staffing. So Centurion mostly pays and hires the providers, and the DOC mostly hires the nurses, though there's some intermixing of that. Okay, so usually when we sue, the first thing I have to figure out is who works for who. That's kind of the deal, right? And like I said, Centurion's got its own processes. The processes, I think, are pretty flimsy. We are in the middle of a lawsuit for a guy who died because he never got a CPAP. He was there for 18 months. And do you folks know what a CPAP is? It's a type of breathing machine that people get when they have obstructive sleep apnea, like which happens when you're sleeping. And when you don't have a CPAP, when you need one, you get an enlarged heart, you develop all these kinds of heart problems, and you also get depressed, you get all kinds of other terrible things, you gain lots of weight, all kinds of bad things happen, right? And you could die from it. And this guy died 2 weeks before he was supposed to be released at age 40. And it was because he tried for 18 months to get them to give him a CPAP, because that's what he used when he was out before he went to prison. And they just farted around. And they blamed it on their process because we're in the middle of that lawsuit right now. They blamed it on their process. And their process was, I write it up, I send a release out to whatever place I think might have his records. And then I just stick it in the file and nothing ever happens. And so they're supposed to be following up on things, and this stuff happens all the time where they screw up on the follow-ups. Because their deal was like, okay, well, when we get a report back from the healthcare facility saying they don't have any testing, then that was supposed to go in a cabinet for me to look at. This is for the nurse practitioner to look at. And I don't know, it never got in the cabinet, so I never saw it. I mean, these flimsy policies and practices are really appalling. And this is how you really see this stuff, right? Come out like that kind of thing. And again, the outside care, to get outside care is a big process through Centurion and through, if it's a certain over a certain dollar amount, through the central office with Dr. James Amsterdam, who's the medical director. So it's a really big pain in the butt.
Could you repeat again what you said, with Centurion and DOC, who's hired by who, or what practitioners are hired by Centurion?
So generally the providers, meaning nurse practitioners, licensed clinical nurses, clinical specialist nurses, and physician's assistants and physicians, dentists, all of those are typically working under Centurion. The nurses, it's a 50-50 mix. Some work for the DOC and some work for Centurion. So that's kind of the deal.
Interesting.
Okay.
Do you know also if that pertains to therapists as well and things like that, or?
I'm a little shaky on the therapist, but I think most of the psychology and, what are considered to be clinical caregivers for mental health do work for Centurion. I do believe that that's correct. Yeah, because in the psychology world, you've got people that like can do just kind of general therapy, like certain psychologists and stuff like that, and then it goes up from there. Like you've got licensed independent clinical social workers. So that's why I put this together, because I have a whole section on psychiatric care, or mental health care, and who can provide that care and what that looks like. So, but I think all of those practitioners generally work for Centurion. Mary?
Yeah, do you know if the nurses are in MNA?
Ooh, I don't know that. That's a good daggone question.
I bet they would like to be unionized.
They should be
I
unionized.
believe they are in M&A, but I could be wrong. I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's a good question. I have
We
not
should
ever
figure
thought
that
about
out.
that. We'll find out. Let's talk about not M&A at some point, but let's talk about the nursing board at some point, because man, I got some things to say about the nursing board, and you're not gonna like them, huh? Well, let me tell you. Okay, so in the Hardell Sherrill case, we filed a complaint with the nursing board, because I'm telling you, you guys, if you would see these videos when they're going in there, and they are doing all this testing on him and his tests are coming up. They did an EKG that showed he should have been in the hospital. And they just ignored it. Everything they did, they're just like, buck up, buddy, knock it off, this kind of stuff, right? The way they talked to this kid, the way that they treated him, to me, was as appalling as it can be. And just a lack of consideration or concern that he really was ill. They thought he was faking. They claimed that he was faking the whole time. And he clearly wasn't. So we complained. It took the nursing board 5 years to act on the head nurse's license. She did lose her license, and now she's being prosecuted, by the way, for manslaughter, which is kind of interesting. I think the doctor should be prosecuted as well. It was Dr. Todd Leonard. He lost his license temporarily for about 3 years, and then they gave it back to him, which I think is really appalling. We killed his business. We bankrupted his business, which is good, because he and his business were responsible for 52 deaths in this state, in these jails. That guy should not be licensed. I feel like the medical board and the nursing board do not protect people appropriately. And I, when we had filed the complaint, they had their meetings on like Saturdays at 8 a.m. or something. I was logging into all of their meetings and speaking as a member of the public and going, why haven't you acted on this license? Why aren't you doing anything? Your job is to protect the public from poor caregivers. I was doing that on all the medical board and the nursing board, and they were like, next, it was really appalling. And I think that those are places that we need to put more pressure, because that's not right. So I think that's really horrible. I want to mention just couple more things about the DOC facilities and things like that. So Oak Park Heights operates a thing called the TCU, or Transitional Care Unit. It's almost a full service hospital. It's for people that say go into the hospital for a surgery or whatever, and they come out and they're not in enough shape that they can just slide on back into their cell and do their thing, right? So they operate the TCU, which is again a subacute care hospital. And so that's important to know about. So sometimes loved ones are, sent to the TCU, and that's good reason, right? The other thing is that Faribault Prison operates a thing called the Linden Unit, and the Linden Unit is essentially a nursing home. And that's because the population in prisons is aging. And because we like giving people like really super long, stupid sentences, people that could not harm a fly any longer are still stuck in the damn prisons for a really long time, with their goal of essentially having these people die in the prison, which is, I think, pretty atrocious. Huh?
Three times the cost as well.
Yes, exactly. It costs, most people do not realize this, but it costs on average over $68,000 a year to keep one person in the DOC. So the idea that, that you are gonna keep these people for ridiculous amounts of time is asinine. So, anyway, so that's the thing. And then the other thing is, in federal facilities, there are 24/7, there is 24/7 medical care by federal statute. And that the whole system is overseen by, believe it or not, the Assistant Attorney General of the Assistant Attorney General of the US. Yeah.
What if that was in the state?
What's that?
What if we had some oversight in the state?
Yeah, we could use some better oversight in the state for sure. I'm just telling you what it is, not what it should be, right? And that kind of thing. And the Bureau of Prisons, even with that, there are issues with medical care in the Bureau, in the BOP. It's harder to have an impact to make them give people care there. It's a lot harder because it's really hard to reach their health services. So we do what we can with that, okay? All right, so now let's talk about how you advocate. And you folks in this, most everybody on here already knows the answers, so I'm probably not going to tell you anything more than what you already know. But it is important. One of the things I always say to guys when I talk to them, and I talk to a lot of people, I probably have 300 clients in the prison for real. Okay, seriously, right? And I talk to these guys a lot. Some of them maybe a little too much because they call a lot, And I'm like, guy, I could work on your case if you would let me off the phone, but no, I mean, because people need, they need the information they need, right? And one of the things that I always say to people is, if they've got family members that are looking out for them and things, I tell them, I am so happy for you that you have an outside person who is looking out for you, because there's a lot of guys who don't have that. And for the ones who do, this is a really important resource. It really is, you guys. You have no idea how important you are to folks. And so I think that that's one thing. So when you are going to be advocating for somebody, be prepared. Start by knowing, in the prison system, you got to know their OID. I'm never going to call up and say, you're not giving Joey Smith his medication. I'm going to say, I'm calling regarding Joseph Smith, OID 123456. You know what I mean? I'm going to be prepared. In the jail, you need to, if you possibly can, know the person's full name, which is easy enough because you get it off the roster, but their date of birth, which isn't on the roster. So to the degree that you can get that information and call, that's really helpful information, because it helps, because, people that have similar names and things like that, if you're calling about medical care for somebody named Muhammad Abdi, okay, you better damn well know the date of birth, okay? Because there's probably 3 Muhammad Abdis in Hennepin County Jail at any given moment, right? You know what I'm saying, right? So be prepared. And for federal prison, their full name and what's called their register number. You have to know their register number, which is usually 2 digits and 6 numbers behind it. So I always make sure I got all that before I get on the phone, right? Oh, another thing I forgot to say about the jails. You can bring your loved one's medication to the jail. And that's actually a really good idea. And if you're smart, bring a brand new prescription. It has to come in a prescription bottle with the instructions on it. But if you've got kind of a half open bottle, sometimes the jails actually will reject that. So it's a little bit better if you can bring a brand new prescription to the jail, if you're at all able to do that. That's a pretty big deal. The jails, under the new rules under the Larry R. Hill Act, still have to verify the medication. And they can verify it through calling the pharmacy. They can actually accept the medication bottle as verification, but some of them don't want to do that. So they have to either verify it with the pharmacy or with the caregiver that prescribed the medication, things like that. So, yeah, okay. Sorry, I can't really see this stuff, so thanks.
Nancy.
I would just suggest, my husband, Michelle, you probably know me. I'm Richard's wife.
Oh, you're that Nancy.
I am. I am that Nancy.
I don't think I've ever seen your face, so I don't even,
Yeah, I
Yeah.
am that
Wow.
Nancy. That's why I was like, oh, finally, Michelle, I get to see you. But I will tell you, like when Richard went to county, when I called up there because they didn't, if I would have brought his opiates with,
Yeah, they
or
wouldn't have
his
said.
methocarbamol, they would have
Yeah.
thrown away. So I
Right, they wouldn't
called
have
and
said that.
asked every medication, can I bring this with? So that
Very
it
smart.
didn't end up getting disposed of.
Right. That very smart. Thank you for saying that. That's a really smart thing to say, because you're right. You and those meds are expensive. We can't be letting them throw our meds away. No.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
No. So that kind of thing. And big thing is, and they do spend some time talking about this in the prison system, like when they're at in St. Cloud. But the big thing is find out what the procedure is for asking for care. I was, right before I came here, I was on the phone for a pretty long time with a guy that's in Ramsey County, and they weren't letting him have care, but he wasn't asking for it the correct way. And he needed care because this is a guy that just had a heart attack not that long ago. So, and he was having, side pain and chest pain and stuff. I'm like, dude, you need to get this care, And so he wasn't asking for it the right way. And also, sometimes when people get frustrated, they mouth, right? We know that people mouth off, right? Blah, 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 right? And so I'm on the phone with this guy and he's like, you didn't want to let me have care. And I'm like, dude, they're not going to give you care, Settle the heck down. Talk to them like normal humans. The nurse is standing there waiting to give you care and you're sitting here arguing. Get off the freaking phone. He's like, and I've got my lawyer on the phone, which I'm not a lawyer, but these people always say that, right? And I'm thinking to myself, why are you telling these people this? Just get off the phone and get your freaking care. She's waiting to give it to you. I mean, that's the thing is, sometimes a little politeness goes a long way. Screaming at people all the time does not always make it. So, and in my world, the way that I do things, I talk to the first person in the chain. I know everybody goes, go to the top. Well, the problem with go to the top is that once you've gone to the top, you don't have anywhere else to go. So I generally try to start, believe it or not, at the lower levels. Like I'll call health services at the facility. I will talk to whoever answers the phone, that's a nurse, and I'll talk to them and I'll say, listen, this needs to happen. I have a guy that is functionally blind and he's on, like insulin and stuff. And I guess he got crabby one day or something. And the nurse was trying to not give him his insulin. She's like, well, you're not acting right. I'm not going to give you your insulin. I'm like, hold the phone here. So he calls me up. I'm like, we don't withhold medications as a punishment. That's not it. Right. So I called the nurse, but I didn't go, what the hell is wrong with you? Right. I got on there and I said, listen, Joe, I'll just use that name. Joe needs his insulin. I recognize that you're frustrated with him, but withholding his medication is not an acceptable solution. Yeah. If you want to write him up, that's fine. But you don't get to just withhold his medication. And, but I said it in a calm way. I didn't say, what, right? Because I don't think I would have gotten a good result that way. And I said, listen, I know we all get frustrated, but just go give the man his insulin. Would you please? And she's like, yeah, I will, and she did. So, you know what I mean? And I start there. Like, I'm not going to call up Dr. Amsterdam and go, some nurse asshole at some place didn't give these person their insulin, right? That is not how you're going to get him his insulin. That's the immediate need. And we deal with it a different way, right? So that sort of stuff. And then, that kind of thing. Also, if you don't have a signed release, so they have to have it, just again, remember they have HIPAA rights, right? So I can't just call up and say, hey, I'm calling about inmate, Joe Blow, OID 3456789 or whatever, right? I can't just do that. And then the nurses are going to say, well, let me tell you what's going on with it. No. And they shouldn't, because these folks have HIPAA rights. So there's two solutions to that. One of them is to get your loved one to get an ROI from medical, sign it and hand it right into them with your name on it. Okay. I get guys to do that for me all the time. I'd say, go to health services, get an ROI, stick my name on it and sign it. Okay. And they do it all the time. Or if there's something that's a little more urgent and there's no time for that, I will just call up and I'll say, listen, I recognize that you don't have an ROI with my name on it. I recognize you can't give information to me, but I want to give some information to you. See, communication can be two-way or one-way, right? So I always say, I don't need you to tell me anything about him. I just need to tell you what I know. And he's been in pain for 3 days. He's been trying to get on sick call and he keeps getting passed over. This guy is having abdominal pain. I'm concerned about him. I would like you to check him. Whatever. And I can just, I finagle it, I finesse it, right? And that kind of thing. And then, in the meantime, I've told that person, you call me in 2 hours and let me know if you've gotten medical care or not, what's going on. You call me and let me know. And so I can hear from them what's happening, right? Or you JPay me or whatever it is, they can do that. A word about JPay, okay? I don't love, this is weird. I see that I have a lot of the same text on here twice. This is very weird. Okay. I don't love putting things in JPay. Like when I communicate people in JPay, I put things like, please call me. I don't put like, hey, I talked to the nurse and this is what they said and blah, 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 blah. Why? Because the thing about JPay is that it gets printed off and handed to them. And that means a whole lot of people get to see it on the way there. So I don't do.
That's within the whole.
Yeah, especially, exactly. But really, I really do not love communications through JPay. I use them to tell people to call me or like if there's some urgent situation, but otherwise I am not interested in, and because I'm working in the legal field, I definitely am not interested in saying, hey, here's what's going on with your case and blah, 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 blah. I don't do any of that in JPay. And I tell these guys that I said, I'll give you an update that says, call me. That's going to be the update. And then you can call me and then I can tell you, that kind of thing. Make sense?
Yeah, Nancy has a question.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say that I think that I don't care what facility it is, any document the prisoner has to send off for someone to read should have a carbon copy
Yeah, the
for them
duplicate.
to keep.
They used to have
Everything.
it that way, but they don't anymore. They got rid of the duplicate ones and now it's like those yellow pieces of paper instead. So
Yeah.
I would agree with you on that. And like I
Because-
said, I usually start at the bottom. So I start at health services. And then if I'm not getting satisfaction, I ask to speak to the nursing supervisor of health services. And then I just work my way up the chain. I don't go to the central office unless I really have to. I have had to go to the central office a few times. Back when Nan Larson was in charge at central office, I used to call her periodically, because I made a relationship with her. And, would try to just only call her and I'd say, listen, Nan, that I don't bother you unless something's really desperate, right? And, so I always start like that. And I say, but I gotta bother you. I gotta bother you because this one's really bad and you need to step in. So I do, I don't have much of a relationship with this current one, Jolene Robertus, the new one. But I'm working on trying to get that relationship because I want to be able to call them when there's something serious. So I have talked to Dr. Amsterdam a few times when it was absolutely necessary for me to do so. So, but again, I save that stuff and try to work it out locally as much as I humanly can. Also, big one, document your calls, whatever things you've done, emails, whatever, but document, like if you call, write down the date, the time, who you spoke to and what you said, what was said, right? Document that stuff. If we end up with a lawsuit later, that documentation will become quite important.
I do have a question about that. So, like when it comes to like advocacy, generally, we encourage people to follow up with an email, like, hey, we spoke, or hey,
I think that's a great idea.
I left a voicemail following up about this specific, incident. However, if people are like, how if people are just documenting on a piece of paper,
That's valid
that's
too.
still valid.
That's
Okay,
completely
that's
valid.
good to know.
If it's contemporaneous, like you can't write all your notes like 3 weeks later.
Right.
It has to be
right.
contemporaneous, it has to be at the time.
Yeah.
But I've used that documentation in lawsuits.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's good
I
to know
like it.
then, 'cause
I love
as well,
that.
I will, like, if I get a phone call or if I call someone, I always write down the time. But I encourage people to follow up via email because that's an actual.
I think that's a good idea too. I don't think it's a bad idea. Like, if it's something like you said, thank you for your call tonight. I wanted just to reiterate what we discussed. You said you were going to do this, this and this, right? I don't think that's wrong at all. I think it's very good. Yeah, I do. Because, but even if it's just handwritten notes, if somebody doesn't have access to the internet or whatever, right? They can still do a very good job of documenting, and we've used that documentation quite frequently in lawsuits and things like that. So I think doing that stuff. Also, one other thing, if the person has a criminal defense attorney, now, people that are in the DOC, their criminal case is over, so they no longer have a criminal defense attorney unless they're facing some other charges, right? But people that are in the jails have criminal defense attorneys, and those people should always be made aware of health issues. I have seen situations where the criminal defense attorney will go into the jail. There was one in particular I remember where a person was getting really atrocious care and like literally was being starved to death because they couldn't eat the food that they were being given because they wouldn't follow their dietary restrictions. And this was not like I don't want to eat. It wasn't like I only eat kosher food. It was like I'm allergic to, like serious allergies, right? And so this guy was like literally, I mean, he went into the prison like a normal weight and he came out looking like a damn skeleton. We're actually suing on that case. And in that particular case, the only reason he survived it is because his criminal defense attorney said, "Oh my God, what the hell is going on with you?" Went to the judge and got that guy moved to a different jail. So, that kind of thing, right? Oh, hey, Emily. Been a long time.
It has been a while.
Yes,
Wait,
it has.
you are talking to me. Okay, sorry.
Yes, I am.
My hand is up because I wanted to ask you how long JPay has worked like that, where my messages get printed out on a piece of paper and handed to the IP.
It depends if they have a tablet or because half the places don't have tablets anymore. They're getting rid of the tablets.
I know.
Yeah,
I
you
know
can't
about
you
tablets.
can't get them anymore. You can't
Right,
get them
exactly.
in any
If they break, you're just done. Yeah, you can't get them fixed or anything.
So what about the kiosks where people could just sit down there and log in and look at their JPay emails? Like,
for
is that
15
no longer?
minutes.
For
For
15 minutes.
Yeah, they can do it for 15 minutes while people are glaring at them to move along and let them look at their stuff.
Also, if they could print them, it would be helpful too, but they
Yeah,
can't.
I don't know if they can print them.
They
out
can't.
I don't think they can.
Cannot.
No, I didn't think they could. I didn't think they could.
No. Also, Mary has a question in the chat. I don't know if you want to say it, Mary or Emily. Do you have more things? Sorry, go ahead, Emily. Yeah.
That was enough for me.
I know Rod, I think, wants to say something. He just can't find the hand up button.
I can't find the hand up. Where the hell is it?
Go, Rod!
No, yeah. So the only time that I ever had anything printed out for me from JPay was before I had a tablet, and I was in SEG. It was administrative SEG, but I was in SEG, and so I couldn't get on a kiosk. But I've never, after that, especially once I signed up for a JPay account, at St. Cloud, I was never handed another JPay message at all.
Okay.
And and there's
I'm definitely not an expert on JPays. I'm just super cautious because I don't want to put anything in writing that somebody else can see.
No. Well, and they will.
Super cautious.
Yes, they can. They say that all of this will be monitored. You're going to read it. I don't put anything in there that I'm afraid.
Right. So that's why I don't put legal stuff in any JPays, man. It's all like, call me, right. Or I'm setting up a legal call with you, something like that. Because I can do that. I can also set up legal calls.
Should we do Mary's 2 questions and then Nancy?
Please.
Sure. So do the prisons all use the same electronic health record?
I believe all the facilities do now.
Do you know what it's called?
It's called, God, I just looked at that like no time ago. It's somewhat similar to Epic.
Yeah, I just
wonder
if
it's called like Simplex or some other weird name like that.
You have
when I get medical records that are electronic all the time.
You have an ask to have inmates receive a after visit summary after their medical appointments.
I wish they would get that. They say that they can't produce it. We've been asking about it.
You don't think that software can do it?
This is something that we want to see happen, so I'm gonna be working on that, but because for one thing, I'll see I'll see the visit and it'll say things like, I answered this question, I answered that question, I answered all the inmates' questions to their satisfaction. And they fully understood or something like that. It'll be some, notation like that, the normal stuff we put, right? But then I'll get a call from the guy and they'll go, I don't know why the hell they didn't give me my medicine. And you know what I mean? It's like, okay, there is a giant disconnect here. The other thing that drives me crazy, and I'd love to have this stuff to be able to prove it, is that guys will go in and they'll ask to be seen for 2 or 3 different things. And they tell them, we get to treat this today, and then you got to come back the rest.
Yep.
And recognizing that these guys pay $5 copay for each deal, right? And when you make, 25 cents an hour, $5 is a damn lot of money, right? And so there are guys who don't go in and get care when they need it because they don't have the $5 to pay the copay,
You could find that and send it to Mary.
What's that?
The name of the medical records.
Can I send it to you? Yeah, I have to just look at it. I can't remember.
Could I look it up right now? Like, what would I Google if I needed to look that up?
I don't know, I'd have to probably just look at their medical records. I don't know, it's some name like, it's some weird simplex or synchronicity or some goofy ass name like that. That doesn't make any sense, but.
What's your other question, Mary? We really appreciate that, Michelle.
It was, are the Centurion providers included in a chain of command, or is their chain of command up to their company?
It's up through their company. It's up through their company. So if they've got, if they want things, they have to send it into their medical director, whose name is like escaping me right now.
So I have a mail.
It's not Dr. Amsterdam. It's another guy. And it's not Dr. Krana either. He wasn't for a while though.
The nurse practitioner provider at Stillwater, we have evidence of her lying about test results, and we have evidence just of malpractice, right? So I don't know, because she's a nurse practitioner, can I go to the Board of Nursing?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because nurse practitioners are advanced practice nurses, so they go through the nursing board.
And she's an employee of Centurion. I'm imagining.
Yeah, I believe so, because pretty much all the providers are employees of Centurion. And then like I said, with the registered nurses, it's about 50-50. So. Yeah.
Someone's asking for your contact.
I think,
do you want
Nancy get address them?
Oh, yeah. Do you want to put your email in the chat, Michelle, if that's
I can do that, yeah. I can. Okay. It's not like 1,000 people don't already know it,
I know.
When y'all want to type it in? Yeah, if you don't mind.
What is it?
Because my shoulder arthritis. It's, Michelle Gross, MICHELLE, GROSS. And probably the easiest way to reach me is through my cell phone, 612-703-1612. Or you could do Michelle, MICHELLE, at Z as in zebra, R as in rhino, L as in lion, law.com. So ZRLLAW.com. So people can reach me that way as well.
Do you want to look at the screen and make sure that's correct?
Yeah, perfect. Ooh, you are good. Thank you.
Wow.
Thank you for that.
But Nancy, you should go.
Yeah.
I just wanted to go back to one of the best things Michelle told me when my life partner got put in there was, as far as health services, anybody that you think, right down to a doctor that's going to need to talk to health services, you put one in for each person immediately. Like,
yes.
I mean, we did it for Richard's daughter. We did it for the lawyer. We did it for Michelle. We did it for anybody at all. His heart doctor, because he had a valve replacement right before he went in. And just anybody you think that's going to have to speak to health services. It's just best to put one in right away.
I would tell you this, that you shouldn't have the need to do that for other caregivers, because under HIPAA, we get to communicate Other caregivers, like if you're a direct caregiver of that person, like the heart doctor, should be able to communicate because that HIPAA is written that way so that there can be communication for continuity of care, right? But you're not wrong,
Yeah,
because
but
they
like
will
I
use
said, if
excuses.
you,
They
yeah,
will use excuses and it does,
yeah.
and it makes plenty of sense what you're saying.
If you remember Michelle Richard, his heart doctor wanted to call in and they kept telling, no, you can't talk to him or we can't release information
Yeah,
because
it's
you
just
don't,
garbage.
yeah, you don't have a form in. And like I said, he literally just had open heart surgery.
Yeah, no, this is
And
just asinine. I
it
know
was
that's
just, it was
ridiculous.
ridiculous that he even had to
It is.
have one.
It is ridiculous, but it's a good measure. The other thing that I tell people, and I don't have this anywhere in my paperwork, but one of the things that I tell people when they go in, especially if they have healthcare concerns, but really in general, they should get somebody appointed power of attorney, and it should be somebody that they truly trust. Because
Absolutely.
I had somebody that was appointed power of attorney, one of the guys, and he called me. I didn't tell him to do it, but he had done it on his own. He called me and said my power of attorney cleaned out my bank account. So I actually worked with him being able to make a police report in the DOC, and believe it or not, the Lino Lakes PD did a damn good job for this guy.
Wow.
They went and met with him, they took all the documentation, and they're pursuing a legal case against the person that did that. So I don't trust cops a lot, but they did a good job in that case. So, and it was because I called up that police department, I explained what was happening. I told them how to set up a legal call with the guy, and they went in, like I said, they did a legal call, and then they did some in-person visits, and they are pursuing it. So, it's gotta be somebody you trust. For God's sakes, do not just give it to anybody, okay? But power of attorney is really important, and it needs to be, at least a healthcare directive type power of attorney. You need at least that
Correct.
for somebody to make those decisions. One other thing I didn't mention, and I think this is important, is that people in any of the carceral facilities, so under the Hardell-Sherrill Act, the jails are required as part of their intake to collect a contact name and number of who to call if the person becomes debilitated. That's as part of the Hardell-Sherrill Act, and the prisons have to do it as well. So make sure that the prison knows who to call if the person, if the what they call the IP, which I hate that terminology, but anyway, you know what I mean? If that person needs to be taken to a hospital or something really bad happens or whatever, make sure that they knew who to call in the family or their contacts in the outside world. Make sure that that's done. So, fair enough?
Yeah. Can I just quick say, I can't see who's there, but if there's anyone who's not on our email list or connected to a facility and wants to be, please put your name and email or contact info in the chat and we can connect you to whatever facility. Or if you're interested in doing medical stuff in particular, we'd love to know your contact info so we can loop back as we build
Yeah.
this medical team. So
Absolutely.
no pressure, but if anyone's interested, please do that before we get
Yeah.
out of here.
We're actually working with Minnesota Freedom Fund to put together a team, a multifunctional team that will be able to look at jail situations and prison situations, which I think one of the things that, so people think, oh, Hennepin County and Ramsey County, they got great healthcare and blah, blah, blah. They don't. We have sued both of those facilities so damn many times, and we're in the middle of suing them again because of the poor quality of care. One example is a guy so dental, we don't talk about dental an awful lot, and we should, right? Because dental's a hot mess, especially at the DOC. The dentists that they bring in are so underqualified. And all they want to do is pull people's teeth,
Exactly.
and for them, they try to make up nonsense. So at dental, their dental policy is that there's 5 levels of care. There's like emergency dental care, like if you fracture a tooth or something, right? Then there's like, urgent dental care, then there's routine dental care, then there's, like more extensive dental care, and then there's cosmetic dental care. They rank root canals as cosmetic, which is bull. I'm gonna do something about this. I swear that's gonna be a hill I'm gonna die on because this is nonsense. What they want to do is they want to just pull teeth because they don't ever bring anybody in that facility that's qualified to do root canals. And what they tell these guys is like, well, if you want a root canal, you can pay for it yourself. And what pay for it yourself actually equates to is pay the dentist, the medical, right, and the anesthesia and whatever else you need, but also pay the COs to take you there and stay there with you. And that is prohibitively expensive when you think that just the root canal alone is usually like, I don't know, anywhere from $1,500 to $2,500 for
And
guys
is
that, a quarter an hour, right?
is that all their people too that they have to go see, or
No,
no?
no,
Okay.
you can pick the dentist of your choosing because none
Right.
of their dentists are capable or competent to do.
Got ya.
And the dentist will even tell people, they'll say, I don't know how to do root canals, I just pull teeth.
Yeah, Richard
They really say that.
chipped one of his teeth and they wanted to pull it out, and Richard's like, "You're not pulling it
No.
out, dude."
No, it's just nonsensical. I mean, I've got one guy that's probably got 4 teeth in his head because they just keep pulling teeth, pulling teeth, pulling teeth. They don't do proper cleanings. They don't do scalings
Right.
for people that have periodontal disease. They don't do anything to preserve these people. And the
Right.
stupid part for the nurses on here, you all know that gum health is directly tied to heart health, directly tied. So it's completely inane that they do not provide this care properly. So dental is one of the areas I want to actually do a bunch of work on. And by the way, the stuff we do matters. I want to tell you why. So there used to be, they have a unit for and I can't remember what facility was in Faribault, I think. They have a unit for dialysis. And it was Oak Park. I think it was Oak Park. And then I was thinking, why did I think that? But anyway, they had a facility, and that facility was so damn dirty and was so poorly run. It was run by an outside company who had no business, doing anything more than sticking Band-Aids on people. They were horrible. And so every guy that I was dealing with, I had like 9 guys that I was dealing with down there that they were all getting their fistulas blown out. They weren't using ultrasounds to find the fistulas or anything. They weren't doing anything you're supposed to do. They weren't properly, using like chlorhexidine to clean the site before they pierced it. They just did everything wrong that you could do. And then if the nurses, like if they were running late, they wouldn't finish the dialysis. They wouldn't do a whole dialysis. They'd say, well, come back later, you know what I mean? Because they wanted to get done. So they were leaving, they were leaving half dialysis, right? And all of these guys were getting sicker than hell. Every single person in that unit developed a MRSA. Every single one, to a person. And so, I'm not a dialysis expert, okay? I'm just gonna tell you that right now. I don't have much background. I had to do a lot of reading, right? But this stuff of blowing out fistulas and giving everybody MRSAs and all of this crap was so ridiculous.
So what is the resolve on situations?
What's that?
What's the resolve?
What I did, so let me tell you what I did. I started complaining like holy hell all the time, and I kept saying, who's this company? What's their contract? I want to see that contract and all of that. They got so sick of me, they got rid of that company and they brought in an actual real company. And I get no complaints on Dallas. It took like going through 2 iterations of companies. It wasn't even the second one wasn't adequate. So 2, you remember that? They brought in some other janky ass deal. And then, but me doing so much complaining and calling the central office and saying, I want to know what's going on with this contract because this is screwed up. But we got those guys finally some decent dialysis. Also, the other thing that was going on is there was a guy across from the dialysis unit that was very severely mentally ill. And he was basically a poop thrower. You know what I mean? They have guys like that, right? The fecal throwers, and they basically would keep his door open all the time. So all that, bacteria and everything was wending its way into the dialysis unit. And recognize that people that have end-stage renal disease, that are like on dialysis, they have compromised immune systems too. So, this was really, really horrible stuff. And so, we fixed up that problem. I worked super damn hard to get rid of the contracts that they had. And finally, they have a new. So your work can actually materially end up not just helping that individual, but helping the whole of people that need that work. So, does that help?
Michelle? Karen has a hand.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I can't see it, so. Hi, Caroline.
I just want to say going back to the dental stuff, I have a guy who had a really terrible situation with a dentist and a root canal and a sinus infection. So,
Oh, I wonder if I know your person because I deal with a guy that, or I dealt with a guy that had that.
Gary?
Yeah, I know him really well.
Yeah,
Yeah, he's mine.
so
You could not believe how many phone calls I made for that guy. So, yeah, I've talked to him many times. So,
Is
yeah.
there something going on still, Karen, you wanted to ask about?
no, I was just gonna say if you needed another case to look at, but he thank God got
No, I've made a lot of calls on his
his stuff
behalf. I
taken
have
care
called
of.
and called and called on his behalf many times. But no, you can get good outcomes. And like I said, some of the outcomes can be not just, the immediate person, but you can actually strengthen the whole system by just being persistent and stuff like that. So I'm still looking at possibly doing a case for the 9 guys I was working on. And I'm still, working on that possibility. But because, all these guys got damn nurses. I mean, what in the hell is this, right? What's that?
Nurse is scary.
Yeah, it is. Well, I mean, and these are guys again with compromised immune systems. So there's no excuses for the filthy, these nurses, they were saying like they weren't even washing their hands. I'm like, what in the heck? I'm sorry. There's some basic stuff. Hand hygiene is like number 1, right? Yeah.
So I wanted to go back to one of the questions that I had asked you earlier about advocacy.
Yeah.
And when it comes to their rights, what could you maybe do like an example of what you could say when they are refusing medication, like, or if they're saying this isn't a medication that we provide anymore, like what are the rights behind that? And how do you communicate with people that are, I think a lot of guys are saying that, they're refusing me my medication or they're refusing to redo this blood draw that that they did, things like that. How do you navigate that in real time?
I think it's persistence for starters, but I just start by, making that phone call and I'll say, I'm working with, Mr. Joe Smith, OID 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And he has been on gabapentin for 15 years. And then suddenly he's not allowed to take that any longer. And he has, so the other thing is I want to know why they're taking it, right? I'm going to talk to them first. And he has, serious diabetic neuropathy. He's got, practically, it's called, well, we in nursing, we call it loss of protective sensation. So I say he's lost, he's got loss of protective sensation in his feet and he's cutting his feet up all the time. He's got real issues with, he's starting to get hand neuropathy because diabetic neuropathy moves up, so I'll say, he's starting to develop hand neuropathy. He's no longer getting gabapentin. What are you going to do about his hand neuropathy? Is there a reason he can't get put back on gabapentin? The big crap is like, oh, people are trading it, blah, blah, blah. Well, yeah, because they don't get any damn pain relief. And all you want them to do is take Tylenol all day long. And that's stupid, So you're not giving people any real pain relief. So I see why it happens. But also they can give people liquid gabapentin. The guy that I'm working with right now, they just finally, after me nagging him, put him back on his liquid. He's getting liquid gabapentin now, which is fine.
Wow.
But I mean, this is what you have to do. You just start and then, I'll even say things like, okay, I really would like you to work on this and I'll call you in a week. I'm gonna let you know that, I ain't going away,
Enough with that, I think a lot of like the brick walls that we run into is like, oh, it's policy, right? And so when
So could you send me that policy?
Right.
I'd like to see that policy. Would you send that to me, please?
And then
it's a data practice request,
if it is a policy and then what do you do?
There is no freaking policy.
Well, right. Like if okay, I'll give a real life example about a gentleman who has flat feet.
Yeah.
He's been wearing Air Nikes. He's been incarcerated for.
Yeah, they're having this whole shoe issue right now.
Yeah.
The shoe issue is a very hot issue right now.
Yeah,
I'm dealing with several people with shoe issues. Including guys who have like toe amputations. And when you have a toe amputation, you need not only special shoes, but you also need inserts to like, especially if it's your big toe, because you lose your balance if you lose your big toe. And so they need shoe inserts and all that. And they're doing this stupid thing, like they're playing these games where it's like, well, only as physical therapy tells you you can have that shoe. You've heard this, right?
Yes, but
Yeah.
please reiterate.
Yeah. I know you've heard the routine. Yeah, only if physical therapy agrees. And then of course, it's like 8 months out to get a damn physical therapy appointment because they have like one little guy that runs around to all the facilities or whatever, which is stupid. I mean, they need to have proper physical therapy, and I've been, pushing on that a little bit too. So, but yeah, this shoe thing is nonsense. What I would do is frame it as an ADA accommodation. And that's what I've had some success framing it out that way. That look, and then some of them say, no, it's not ADA. I said, yes, it is. This person is missing his first 3 toes. He has a balance issue. And he needs both the proper, shoes as well as that shoe insert. And he cannot function without that. And this guy he's at fall risk and all of this stuff, just start, doing that.
In my experience with asking for an ADA accommodation too, it usually involves somebody else, and it depends on the facility. But like usually somebody else is in charge of ADA.
Oh, they always go, yeah, you'll have to talk to AWA about that.
Yeah, but then it's like, then if you can get that in.
And then they go,
email
the AWA says, you have to talk to health services. So I just write them both.
Yeah, but like what I did was.
Yeah, I'm not gonna play those games with them.
Write them both, but then I said, well, he told me that you could do this, and then it's like, oh, like the DOC told you the DOC to do this, so then they kind of can't, they have to argue.
Yeah, exactly. We're doing a lot about ADA stuff, and you're gonna learn more about that next month, but we are doing, David runs a very good committee that we're doing a bunch of work to try to like address these stupid ADA things,
You run the committee too.
No, I know. Yeah, you run the committee, but no, we do need to, I mean, that is a piece of it because, and the part of the issue is that ADA and health services kind of overlap. And they always want to go, him, like that, right? Ask her, that kind of thing.
Emily and then Caroline.
You have to unmute yourselves, guys. And honestly, you can just unmute yourselves and just talk, really.
I can go first. I'm having a shoe issue, but I don't know if it can be framed as an ADA accommodation because they don't have it, they're not an amputee. It's like a preventative measure and to kind of combat back pain. The back pain has caused.
It's for back pain? I'm sorry, I couldn't quite hear you.
Yeah, sorry. It's for back pain and like a collapsing disc. And so
that's an ADA issue.
That's an ADA.
Okay.
No question. If you have a condition that affects your ability to engage in, how's the exact language? Substantially or materially limits one or more major life activities, like walking, taking a shower or whatever, right? That's ADA.
And do they have an MRI scan or anything with that?
That's a great question. Has there been,
is there like, do they have?
What diagnostics have they gotten
Yeah.
to document that situation?
They have an MRI done.
That's right.
Good.
So they can push that. You can.
They waited the 10 months and got the MRI. Sorry. I'm so bitter about that stuff sometimes. Yeah. Yeah, no, all of that stuff matters. Yeah. And the thing about it is they usually want people to buy their own shoes, and people will offer to do it because they don't want to be in pain all the time, right? And then they go, no, you can't do that. It's not on the list.
Right.
It's not on the list. Yeah.
Just like the eyeglasses.
Yeah. Same crap.
Emily, sorry, do you have a question?
Oh, yeah. I just wanted to ask about formularies. And does each individual correctional unit get to kind of like have their own, or is there a statewide formulary? Because I knew a dude
has a formulary. What's
Centurion.
that?
Okay, so this guy that I was working with was in Moose Lake, and somebody, I don't know the name of the doctor, said like, "Oh, you should go on gabapentin," and then somebody else reviewed it and was like, "No."
Yeah, there is like this. big issue that's been going on for about a year and something now over gabapentin. I haven't been able to figure out what the root of that is. So all I could figure out is that there was some woman, physician that came in and she's like, oh, these damn people are on gabapentin. It's too fucking expensive. I'm serious. I'm quoting now. Okay. And so she just started ripping all these people off of gabapentin that need it, that have valid reasons for having it. And also because gabapentin is like the only, pain management medication that they allow other than get Tylenol off the commissary, which is their usual line, right? But this woman just came in and she's like, no, we're not going to do that anymore. It's too damn expensive. I mean, literally that's what happened. And this has been going on for like a year and a half, almost 2 years now. And I've been like super frustrated. There was a lawyer that was going to do a class action and then he kind of backed out. And I was frustrated about that because
it has to be more than a year, maybe 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, maybe it's like that. Yeah.
Yeah, multiple years for sure.
I think I got a data request. I asked for the formulary. So if you can't get it right off of Centurion or the DOC website, I think I might have a copy of it, but it's a couple of years old already.
Yeah, and it's worth updating, getting a newer one,
So it will be the same at all Minnesota facilities, yes?
Yeah, all the DOC facilities, not the jails.
Oh, you're right, not the county.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Right. All the ones that are managed by Centurion. So yeah.
Caroline, do you still have a question?
No, sorry.
It's okay, thank you.
It's okay.
I do have a question.
Sure.
And you were talking about standards, so I just wanted to clarify, because you said a lot throughout your speaking was like jail and the DOC. So are the standards the same for jail and DOC?
Yes.
100% of the way.
Yes, they are.
Outside
Both,
of that 24/7.
Yes. The DOC has slightly more responsibility because they deal with more chronic illness.
Sure.
And because they deal with older inmates, they have to have facilities like Linda Unit, to deal with, and it's sensible. And they also, I don't know of any jail that has a TCU, and it makes sense that, because what they do, if somebody needs to go to the hospital and whatever, they just keep them at the hospital until they're done, in the jail setting.
There's been an ongoing noticing by women in Shakopee that they don't have an infirmary or anything like that at Shakopee.
Yeah, that's an issue.
Do you have any thoughts on that?
They need to get one.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's an easy one. One of the things that I wanted to talk about is something that I'm seriously interested in working on. I do write legislation and I've got some plans because one of the things we figured out with Larry R. Hill Act in the jails, and I do talk about jail because listen, it's a continuum, right?
Yeah.
So, what's that?
Jails are worse.
Yeah, they can be. And one of the things that comes up is, especially in these rural jails and things like that, is, I am thinking a whole lot about the need for what I'm calling regional jails. Regional jails that would be larger for people who have substance use disorder, because what happens now in Hennepin County is actually a good model. It's a very good model. What happens in Hennepin County is that they have a whole unit they've got a guy who's a psychiatrist, a psychologist who is an addiction medicine specialist. Might be a psychiatrist, I don't remember. Anyway, he's an addiction medicine specialist. And anybody that comes in on any drug charge, they approach them right away. If they're going through withdrawal, one thing I haven't had problems with is bad withdrawal care at Hennepin County Jail, because they know what they're doing and they're doing a good job. But they also offer people treatment while they're there, medication assisted treatment. So they'll put people on, Suboxone or Subricate or whatever, right? But then they also make that treatment available to anybody in the jail who wants it. So they offer it. They don't pressure people to do it unless the person comes in with a drug charge. They come in with a drug charge, they're going in treatment. But everybody else has the option to go in treatment, and it's working really well. And the reason that this is important, you guys, is this. The number one group of people who die from overdoses are people coming out of the jail, because they are so damn dope sick and hungry, for their drug of choice, that they come out. And also because during that time they were in jail, their tolerance for the level that they were at when they went in the jail goes down. And then they come out and they take the same dose, if you will, of the drug that they were on when they were, before they went into jail, and they die. So the absolute number one group of people that die from drug overdoses are people out of jail. And so this has really, really helped lower that number in Hennepin County. I would like to see the same thing happen in other areas and other jails, but the smaller jails don't have the capacity. You got a 10-bed jail or 25-bed jail, it's not going to happen because you can't hire the staff. What I want to see is regional jails for people with substance use disorder that can be then sent to that area to then get the same kind of care that people are getting in Hennepin County. So I'm kind of working on that thing, you know.
Do you want to talk about the advisory task force idea in terms of medical oversight?
Yeah, we can talk about that.
I'm curious what people think or what people. Yeah.
So in our most recent discussion among so we have this like ongoing monthly meeting with people that are working on ADA issues in the prison
People
system.
are welcome to join.
And yeah, listen, man, if you want to be part of it, jump on board, you know, because we have tons of work we're trying to get done. The most recent thing that we did that I think is pretty exciting is we wrote a whole training for, you know, people in the system on what ADA looks like and how to get it within the prison system. So I think that's pretty darn good. And we're going to be giving that training. We're going to deliver that at the social worker conference in Duluth in October, right? But what we're going to do in the meantime,
next month too.
Yeah, and next month too. That's right. I keep forgetting about that one. But basically, we're also going to be, we are putting together like a proposal, and this will probably have to go to the legislature as well, a proposal that the DOC form an advisory committee of healthcare folk, regular community members, and families and loved ones of people in the system, and maybe even some of the people in the system, you know, like put together. We just came up with this proposal literally like 2 days ago, right? So we are working on putting what that statute would look like. And one of the people that's on the in the work group is a woman named Ellen, who does a lot of legislative stuff. I do legislative stuff. So a few of us that know how to do some of this stuff, we're gonna put this together and we're gonna get it to happen. And I got exactly in my head the exact author I need to bring this to.
So if anyone has ideas for what that should look like, what the task force should look like, what kind of powers, how it should work, what it should be used for, if any people have thoughts at the cup or as we go, definitely love to be.
And it would definitely be about medical and ADA and that stuff. It's not just a generalized task force. This is specifically to deal with medical issues in the DOC.
And the idea would be then to be able to consistently have the DOC have to show up to deal with these types of issues until
because we started contacting and working with Paul Schnell, and he met with us like what, twice, and then after that or once or whatever, and then he's like, okay, it's all we're gonna take up your ideas, thanks, bye. And then, you know, we can't get another damn meeting with this guy for nothing, you know. And he's gone in what, 5 months anyway, so who cares, right? You know, but then we got to worry about who's going to be the next one. You know? So
are there any thoughts on what would be useful for a task force like that? Or feel free to think about it, and then you can contact Michelle or me or whoever.
I just think
would the case for like excited delirium, I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, would that have sort of like would
okay,
that be
you want me to
helpful?
talk about that, do you? I wrote the state statute that blocked doctors and cops and all these other and medical examiners from ever using that terminology again, ever in this state. It is banned. And I wrote that damn piece of legislation, and I'm so fucking happy I did.
You can't have fake medical diagnosis
No.
by killing people.
No,
Yeah,
no,
you can't do that shit.
No. And there was a whole bunch of nasty that came with that, where we had, you know, there was two doctors, Dr. Strang and Dr. Ho out of Hennepin County Medical Center that were both on the board of Taser International. And the whole thing about excited delirium was to make an excuse for why people were dying from tasers, right? That was the whole deal with it, right? Yeah. And the two of them, you know, were promoting this whole excited delirium bullshit. And they were doing this unwaived or whatever they call it, you know, basically these medical experiments on people that were unconscious and couldn't give an answer, yes or no. And they were shooting all these people up with, you know, with ketamine and all this other crap. And 59% of the people, I know this by heart because I wrote the first ketamine lawsuit in the state. 59% of the people that go on, that are given ketamine you know, in a pre-hospital setting or like outside of an anesthesia room, 59% end up on intubation. And the regular stuff we normally use, you know, Thorazine, you know, whatever, doesn't give you any people that get respiratory distress. But 59% of the people that got ketamine did. So, you know, and they were doing these it was called like a wave studies or whatever, these really, really corrupt human studies that had no reason to exist. We busted all of that. We shut down their investigation unit. We did a bunch of stuff to kill that off. They are doing nothing else with ketamine. They pulled it from all the trucks and everything. So that's what it should be. So, yeah.
Yeah, I have a question. When it comes to refusals, and I think like for my specific example is a guy that I was working with that pretty much was being refused mental health services.
Yeah.
And you know, I spoke with the person who was refusing, trying to get answers, you know, why is this happening or why are you refusing to work with this person? And pretty much just never got any answers. And so when it comes to those types of situations, you know, what would you suggest or who would you suggest reaching out to and escalating that?
Well, you know, if you hadn't reached out to the AWA, that'd be my next step, because I do send emails to the AWAs all the time and say, this is what's going on. I've tried dealing with this through health services. It's not happening. I need you to step in. And then if and I'll tell you something, I usually get emails back pretty often. Lathan Scott is like sick of me. That's okay though. I don't care. Right. And so, you know, I often get emails back, but if I don't get an email back, I'm going up to the next level. I'm going to go to Jolene Robertus if I have to.
You can go past it.
Yeah. So I'll do what I need to do. So I actually have a case like that right now where, oh, the other thing I did not mention is you can always ask for a care conference for your loved one. And then they, you know, if they have a lot of complications or things like that, you can ask for a care conference. They will have to have permission of that person to include you in the care conference. But I've done that a few times, been part of care conferences where they're, you know, I'm sitting there kind of taking notes and being quiet, but then I'm saying, and why is it that he hasn't had his follow-up for his, you know, his chemotherapy thing, you know, or whatever it is, you know? So you can, you know, the family and the individual can ask for a care conference. And care conferences are good because you get everybody in the room together. Instead of like this one, that one's that one, you know, blaming each other and whatever. You get them all in the room together. And then the goal of a care conference is to come up with an actual plan. So I've done that a few times too, and I think that works pretty well.
Request that.
Okay, Nancy's got something to say about that, I know.
No, I just was gonna say, I had a question about, like, Richard went from one prison to, you know, St. Cloud to Faribault, from Faribault to Moose Lake. And when you're dealing with the ADA, your records don't follow you.
They're supposed to, and we're having a big fit about that, yeah?
Yeah, there has to be something that's done about that. Because, you know, I mean, it's ridiculous. Richard's, as you know, has been fighting with the ADA the whole time he's been there. And you know, it just, there has to be a way to make the whole medical record from outside of prison follow you everywhere, whether the prisoner takes it in their hand and takes it with them or whatever.
Well, I will tell you that the prisons have access to Epic. They have access to look at things in Epic. You know, they can't make entries in it because that's not their system, but they can look at stuff in Epic, and there's not one damn reason that they don't. But to go back to your thing about the ADA accommodations, you'll have more about that next month. But this is one of the things we have been working on is the portability of that, because with them kind of, I don't want to say shutting down Stillwater because it's not quite there yet, but with them like sort of narrowing the number of people that are there and moving people around, man, the number of guys, not only did they lose they keep any records of their accommodations, but guys that had bought their own stuff, like a wedge pillow or their own shoes and stuff, their stuff was getting thrown out.
Yep.
This is deeply unfair. I know I've been complaining like a maniac. You would not believe. So, yeah. And this is disgusting stuff. I was trying to get this one guy his shoes back because what they did was they gave them to a different inmate. They gave his shoes to somebody else.
Is it, Mary, do you want to ask your question, and then maybe we can wrap up sooner or later?
Yeah, there was a guy that was at Stillwater before they transitioned Stillwater to what it is now. And my person had been advocating with this person's case manager to have him transferred to a facility that would be more safe for him. And the only thing that we thought of was maybe St. Peter. And then when Stillwater did close, this person didn't get to go anywhere safe. I think they ended up at Rush City or something.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah, totally vulnerable adult male.
No, and the only solution they ever have for that is to put people in isolation, which is terrible.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, it's really horrible.
Mhm.
Right. One of the things, so just, this is sidebar stuff, but in terms of people that get hurt in the facilities, like by either other inmates or COs, for other inmates, assaults, we get requests to do lawsuits like this all the freaking time, okay? We have to be able to show that the COs knew that there was a risk and they failed to act on that risk. And it can't be just generic, like this guy's mean to everybody, it can't be that minor, right? Or that, I mean, it's not minor, but you know what I mean? It can't be that generic. So that we have one case where the person was getting threatened constantly by a very specific person. That person made it clear that they were being threatened, put it in writing, put it verbally, and all of this stuff, and probably notified the CO 30 or more times that they were being regularly threatened by a particular inmate. And then that inmate beat this person so bad that they sustained a catastrophic traumatic brain injury. We're suing that case, because we can, right? But I had another case where a guy was just using the phone, and this other inmate basically broke off a piece of plastic or glass or something from a television and ran up behind the guy, because the guy was like facing the wall using the phone, right? And ran up and cut him all up on his neck and face and everything. Bad injuries, I almost lost his eye. Really bad, serious injuries. But because no one had any warning that this guy was going to do this, there was no lawsuit. We couldn't sue the DOC because you can only sue if they had some kind of advance warning. So that's kind of one of the other problematic deals.
Mary, you wanted to ask a follow-up quick on that?
Well, that was our conversation between each other.
Okay.
Yeah. That was,
Never mind.
yeah.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. Because we were just commiserating about the developmental delays, and she asked,
Yeah.
my client is actually diagnosed, and I don't know if there is any diagnosis actually, and I don't even know if he would admit that he has developmental delays. It's just more something that I've noticed from working with him.
Right.
And he is in a state where he is developmentally delayed to where his emotional reactions take precedence.
I have seen where they do diagnose that sometimes
Okay.
in the medical records. I've seen it a few times.
Okay.
But I mean, you have to be pretty severely developmentally delayed for them to notice it and put it in your record.
Well, and you have to have the right practitioner probably to do the assessment.
I'm sorry?
Right.
You probably have to have the right practitioner on site to do the assessment.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, and if
Yeah.
you can't even get a therapist, to
Yeah.
to help them with any of these.
And that's one of the problems. I mean, they just don't have enough staff, and they so I mean, something that happens like with physical therapy. Okay, I'm getting physical therapy because I have severe arthritis in my shoulders. And I go to a physical therapist once a week, and then I do all these exercises in between, and then we check in and this and that and whatever. And then I go to my orthopedist and they x-ray my shoulders again and whatever, right? This is like normal care that people get. In the prison system, if you get to see the physical therapist once, they might give you like a little stretchy band thing, to do your exercises on your own, and then you never see them again.
Yes.
Or you might see them a year later. They have no concept of what physical therapy is actually supposed to be like.
Even if you're having surgeries, what I think
Even if you have like a, knee replacement surgery or something where, out in the real world, knee replacement surgery requires for it to be paid for by insurance, you have to have passive motion exercises. Like we put you on a device that goes with your knee, like for several times a day, right? They don't do any of that stuff at the DOC, which is completely ridiculous because again, that's a community healthcare standard. So So there's a lot for us to do, you guys.
Is there any final questions, anyone?
I just wanted one confirmation of the care conference. Who do you request that through?
From the head nurse.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it's best for the family to request it if possible. Yeah, rather than an advocate. All the ones I've sat in on are ones that the families requested. So,
Perfect.
yeah.
Hey, Michelle.
Yeah.
I have a question. It's not really related to health issues, but it's about, abuse in the system. And it's probably not your area. But if I shot you an email, would it be okay to shoot you an email about the
I'll do
the
what I can. I'll
situation? And
answer if I can figure it out. Yeah. Or I'll ask the guy that I work for. You might know.
Or
Yeah.
you might have a referral or something.
Sure.
All right. Thank you.
No problem. No problem. Okay.
Can we all say thank you to Michelle
Oh,
for all
it's
her
fine.
time and expertise?
It's fine. No, my pleasure. My pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thank
My
Thank you
you.
so
pleasure, you
much.
guys.
And see y'all
Appreciate it.
next month for the ADA and
Wait, there's one more.
we'll go.
Yeah, we just wanted, as the grievance team, to let you guys know that we do have the grievance team set up, so that we can advocate for people that are incarcerated, that need help, with situations like this and many more. If you're interested or you have the capacity to help and you want to join a team, Stella is gonna put her information in the chat and you can save that email address, and shoot her a message so that you can contact with us. Be happy to give you even more insight to how to navigate this system. If you're unfamiliar, we do trainings on how to become more familiar with the system, just in order to be an advocate, even if you're not on the team. And so, yeah, just reach out if you have any interest or questions, and we're happy to be here as well.
And these guys do a great job, by the
Yeah,
way. You all do a
sweet.
fabulous job, and thank you for doing it.
Thank you.
It's excellent. It's excellent.
So like literally tell your people, to join the team.
Yes, absolutely.
So we can
Help
keep
her
the
out.
chat up so that way you guys can take that information if you need it.
So like Nancy, for example, you have learned a lot over the history of.
Absolutely.
So if you got interested and had time, you could actually use what you know to help other people.
And I do have time because I have cancer, so I'm not working. And so I'm home all the time and would be more than happy to assist anybody, even after Richard has I think he has under 20 days left.
Yeah, he's getting out soon. And hallelujah. We
yeah.
tried everything we could to keep him from going in the first place. Honestly, we really worked it. We really did.
I
But
still have every intention on coming to these meetings and doing whatever I can to help those poor people that are still incarcerated, that aren't having their basic needs met.
exactly.
And Nancy, do you want to put your info in the chat, or should I connect you to the grievance team?
Sure.
Yeah, if you're comfortable with that, that's great.
Okay.
Sure. Absolutely. Michelle knows I'm more than down for helping anybody that I can, not to go
She's good
through.
too.
Yeah,
She's
good.
persistent, man.
She's very.
I'll say one thing about Nancy, for real, she is so persistent. That is
I
fantastic.
am.
You
I don't give up. And when I get hooked on something,
Yeah.
I do everything I can to make sure that these people don't.
This is
get
what it
away
takes. It
with
really does. This is exactly what it takes, you guys.
Yeah.
Is that level of persistence. So good job, everybody. And thank you all for all you're doing, to help these folks, because look, like I keep on saying, people, when you like get comments out in the public, they're like, oh, these people don't deserve health care, blah, 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 and stupid crap like that. The loss of your freedom is the punishment, not all of that other stuff. Everybody has a constitutional right for health care.
Absolutely.
Someday we're going to actually have single payer, but that'll be a different story. Someday.
All right. Have a beautiful night,
Thank you
y'all.
all, everybody.
Bye, everybody.